On this particular day, I'm sitting at the office and I hear a lot of noise in the central business district of Ndola around the traffic circle at Broadway. I get downstairs and I meet this gentleman who's my guest today, and he's surrounded by merrymaking people. And I asked him a few questions, and he's responding very cheerfully. And cheerful it was for him and his team because on that day, the 12th of August in the year 2021, the United Party for National Development, UPND, beat resoundingly the Patriotic Front in the general election. This gentleman was elected as the Member of Parliament for a particular constituency in Ndola that encompasses the Central Business District, which is Ndola Central. He went on to be appointed as Minister of Transport and Infrastructure.
Logistics.
Transport and logistics. Interesting changes.
Yeah.
He's my guest today on Raw Discourse, and we'll try and have this discussion as raw as possible. How are you, and welcome to the show?
Thank you very much. I'm very well, but thanks for having me.
Let's get back to what I spoke about in the introduction.
Yeah.
We spoke, I remember I did an interview with you, and my question focused more on the word retribution, because a lot of people thought that, you know, the UPND was coming to do revenge because you suffered a lot when you were in opposition.
That is very true, and I think it's typical of African politics that, there is always retribution when there's been a change of guard, or as it were, indeed, change of government. But I guess the United Party for National Development, a party founded way back in 1998, had always figured out that what this country needed after our political independence that we attained in 1964, and also the second liberation of 1991, well, that saw the reintroduction of multi-party politics in this country. We realized that the focus going forward really needed to be economic emancipation, focusing on transforming the economic landscape of our country, and that also our land needed healing. You know, the One Zambia, One Nation motto that our founding fathers had so eloquently espoused is what has been responsible for the peace that we've enjoyed as a people from 1964. And therefore, we had seen, especially the last 10 years of the previous administration, that violence and retribution were becoming a part of politics, and we needed to do away with that. Sort of like rewrite the script, to go back, do a reset button, to be the peaceful beacon of hope that this country has been on the continent. And so it was very clear in our president's mind that, there was not going to be any revenge attacks. There was not going to be any political persecution. And this is why today I'm glad that we didn't only, speak, but we've actually walked the talk.
Okay. At this point, I'm sure you're thinking, what's this guy doing? I got you. My guest's name is Frank Musaab Tayali. And I wanted to see if you would be following well enough to wait for the name as we were introducing it. I didn't introduce it on purpose. I also hoped that you say, hey, you haven't introduced me. But there we go. But is Frank Musaab Tayali the sort of person that espouses peace, or somewhere, in the closet, there are some people that you're saying, I didn't choose Shasana. Getting back to him, the president may have said what he said. I have my own agenda.
Look, I think that a number of us in the UPND have a track record. Mine dates way back, obviously, leadership being shown, in high school when I was elected, and not just appointed, elected head boy of my school, St. Andrews, back then. But also that I went on to become president of the Students' Union at CBU. Those days, you remember that student politics was almost synonymous with violence and university closures. I'm happy that the record that I left at campus is such that there was no university closure during my tenure as president, because I do believe very strongly that dialogue is always the solution. So there is no thread or any iota of violence running through my veins. Not at all. I think that I love my country. I'm a serious patriot, and I cherish what our forefathers planted and inculcated within ourselves as a people. And we see this wherever we go, even in our travels as government officials. Whenever we are abroad, it's always very, it's a nice feeling when people talk about, oh, Zambians are very peaceful, or Zambians are very loving people, or Zambians are very warm. I think that's something that we need to pride ourselves. And it is a serious asset that we have built. And this is why you see now that even as we run government today, and this entrenchment of these values, that even investors are now beginning to respond, that there is, a huge influx of people wanting to work with us to help us come out of the economic challenges that we're currently facing.
You spoke about a nice feeling that, people are talking positively about Zambia. It's also a nice feeling to be in an air-conditioned office. It's a nice feeling to be driven in a VX, very comfortable vehicles. I want you to drive us through the uncomfortable nature of being a students' union leader, transitioning to becoming a minister of the government of the Republic of Zambia.
Well, obviously, I remember my first, day at campus when our vice chancellor came to welcome us. He said something that has still stuck in most of our minds as former students. When he said that, look, you had friends at primary school, but I'm sure you don't remember most of them. You had friends in high school, and that you forget some of them. But the friendships that you establish when you're in university become lifelong, sort of friendships. That statement in itself means a lot. It's a phase in one's life when you have attained university education that really you are the citadel of knowledge, and that it is from that crop of this citadel of knowledge that eventually transition to becoming national leaders. So the experience being a student cannot be substituted for anything else. I think that we had the most fun, the freedom of being a student in a high learning institution like a university like CBU. We had a great time. We were young, straight from high school, bustling with energy and with all the dreams of life ahead of us. So we cannot compare the two. Obviously, many years have passed, and that yes, politics is never and must never be a career. We must have our own careers. We must have attained certain things in our own private capacity.
Right.
Because when you aspire for leadership, then now you're offering a service. So we do not go into leadership because of the perks that come with these roles. To the contrary, I think that we need to come to leadership knowing that we have to offer something.
Weren't there perks at CBU for you as a students union leader?
No, obviously nothing to write home about, because I think that even at that level, your leadership is being tested,
right?
Because students do subscribe, membership to belong to the union, and that it is from that subscription that then you are able to do certain things in a very small way that can impact on students' welfare.
And what about the notion? And what about the notion?
One of the things that, before I forget, one of the things that, for instance, my administration in campus will be remembered for was that it was my leadership that first introduced satellite television at campus. DSTV just was fresh in the country.
Because you were a Mayad child. And you took your manners to school.
No, because obviously, the stress that students go through.
Right.
You need to relax, and that sometimes you've been studying the whole night and yet you're still not sleepy, but you need to take a break. Academics are in such a manner that you need to do them sometimes at intervals, and that sometimes as a way of relaxing, you can go and catch a movie at 03.
Right.
And satellite television had just come to Zambia, and it offered such an opportunity.
Okay, so I was going to ask you about the notion, or when we were talking about perks, of that students' unions in these institutions of higher learning subscribe to political parties, right? So you'll find a particular students' union is either for the opposition or not. What was your case?
My case was very unique. As you can imagine, I first went to university in 1995, and that we were fresh in this new government in a plural setup, the MMD.
Yeah.
And that the former president, our founding leader, Kenneth Kaunda, had left office, and he had started making certain observations about the government that had just taken over. And I remember him, turning the MMD to mean movement for Mandrax dealers, at the time. And I became very familiar to the old man that would sit down and talk. He would invite us to explain to us what he had already observed as going wrong with our country. So ironically, even when the whole nation was so euphoric about this new government of the MMD, my administration was anti-MMD.
Right.
And I remember being summoned to State House by late President Frederick Chiluba through his presidential affairs minister Eric Sulamba, and I was really given a lecture as to how this old man would never ever return to power, and that as students we needed to focus on the core mission of why we were in campus, and that was to study and not to listen to people like KK. And obviously threats of expulsions, were also issued. But that for us, it offered an opportunity to be critical thinkers, to be able to, follow a particular political party because of the values that particular political party was espousing,
Right.
and not just mere, patronage to, kingsmen or whatever the
Right.
case may be.
So now let's skip a little. You transition from being, a students' union leader, and now you have a career of your own. At what point does the thought of becoming member of parliament for Ndola Central creep in?
I'll tell you that for me, the vision was always very clearly embedded in me from childhood.
Right.
And even when I spoke about being head boy for St. Andrews,
Yeah.
I remember starting to interact with the then Member of Parliament, Eric Sulamba. And I always knew what I wanted to end up doing, and that was to offer service and leadership for this beautiful constituency with lovely, lovely people. I've always known what I wanted to be, and so everything that I did was really a means to a certain end. And that from high school head boy to president of the Students' Union in campus, and then to immediately leaving campus to becoming national chairperson for youth affairs in UPND. And that even today, as we speak, I'm the only surviving member of the founding leadership of the party that actually graced and spoke at the launch of the party back in December of 1998. And so you can clearly see that mine was a clear path to what I wanted to become, even when initially I did study chemical engineering as a result of the success that the academic success that I scored in high school, going into university. I guess I did that for prestige. Ultimately, the calling was to study something that would be a tool to make me an effective leader. And so I had to follow my dream and my passion. I then ventured into reading law. And, as most American politicians, for instance, that most of them are lawyers, and they end up, being senators and indeed congressmen. That is a path that I followed. So way back in 2006 was the first time that I actually participated as a candidate for the Ndola Central parliamentary seat. I did not succeed, but knowing that politics was not a career, I continued on my career path for personal growth, looking after the family. But that no sooner had I also, seen that window begin to open, especially with the serious deterioration of good governance tenets, as we saw them in the Patriotic Front. I said that there should be men that should stand up to that tyranny that we started seeing. And that is how, I'm sure you famously saw the launch of my campaign to come fearlessly and challenge those that were trying to promulgate violence, to show them that this is our country, we have nowhere to go, and that would stand up for Mother Zambia. And that's exactly what we did.
You used a very interesting word, tyranny. Is that how you describe
100%.
how
There is no other word that can describe the serious the violence, the culture of cadreism that had come with the Patriotic Front, the impunity of cadres going into a police station and actually physically assaulting police officers. That was something that was ugly, and that most of us realized that had that been perpetuated, that would have been the beginning of the destruction of the institutions that really make a state. And that once these institutions are destroyed, you've got no country to talk about.
Some people will say, look, a tyrant will not even adhere to tenets of democracy. You will not even have, elections.
Modern tyrants hide behind the veil of democracy, and they also conduct, shambolic elections, which they themselves try and manipulate. But 23 years in the opposition, caused us to really, really adequately prepare for the elections, and that we had reached a level of mastery of election monitoring, the ability to be able to run a parallel voter tabulation system, the ability to be able to challenge those people in a national totaling center the moment you begin to see that they want to bring in results which are not verified because they are contrary to what your PVT is actually showing you. So all that was really a very good effort to ensure that we defended democracy. And we did that very successfully, going by the 1 million votes with which we beat the Patriotic Front.
Tell me the reaction, the adrenaline in the Tayali household on that fateful day. You've run a campaign, you're waiting for the results. What's going on at home? Who are you with? What's the mood like?
When you ask that question, immediately, the images come back. It all seems like it was just yesterday. Because, again, you do not know how you are running a campaign and how the people are having to take that particular campaign, whether or not they're agreeing with the ideas that you're putting forward. And then I guess you run with hope, and that's the only thing that you have. Okay, believing in God that everything should turn out the way you expect. And so everybody was awake. I remember that my children, were away, and they actually had to fly in to come, and particularly my oldest daughter took up the challenge to run the parallel voter tabulation system specific for the constituency. And so we had people that were in the field.
Right.
And the moment they were able to get verified results, which were signed by all parties, our representative at the polling station would then be able to forward those results at my home, which was the constituency totaling center. And that, my daughter, who's done computer science, was able to create, obviously, an algorithmic program.
Right.
And she was following. And at some point, she actually said, look, this is done and dusted. You are 5,000 votes ahead of your nearest
So
competitor.
in essence, you were watching your daughter commit a crime, because this was against, what
No.
the government is
This was for our personal use,
Right.
to be able to determine, whether or not one is going to throw in the towel.
So you were committing a crime for
We
personal
were not
use.
committing a crime. Just like we did it at national level.
Right.
My party was able to run a successful PVT. We did it at constituency level. It's the only way you can guarantee, a genuine result. It will be able to show you if you've genuinely lost or indeed you've genuinely won. Right. I think it's a very, very essential tool where a tyrannical government, wants to manipulate an electoral commission. Like, obviously our electoral commission was always quite susceptible.
So let's get to a point now where the results are announced, because I remember you drove into town. We met, we did an interview at the time. What's going through your head?
First of all, before we even come there, I'll tell you that I had not slept for 3 straight days.
What was keeping you?
I was so fatigued that I would have loved to have caught some sleep.
Right.
And I remember attempting to catch a nap one time, and I remember my wife coming to tell me, I said, but you know that if you literally take your eye off this ball, it will be a lost cause. And I remember just getting up and going back, to join my colleagues that I was working with, to continuously go around and checking the polling stations, checking to ensure that no one was being intimidated, just basically trying to ensure that we're going to be given a fair chance. Right. And so for 3 days, we were awake. But even what was even more disheartening was that for the constituency totaling center, which was at Kansenshi Secondary School, if I, as a candidate, had all the electoral information, all the electoral data, which was pointing to the fact that I had resoundingly taken the seat, the constituency totaling center claimed they did not have all the results. And that is why they kept on delaying. Everything within this, urban constituency was within reach by motor vehicles. And so there was no justification whatsoever that you can take 72 hours to come and announce a particular result. And so that was an indicator of an attempt by the then party in government to manipulate the results.
So you said something interesting that I want to get your thought over. It's an urban constituency and everything is reachable.
Yeah.
Is it justifiable then for delays to be done in a rural setup?
There will be certain rural constituencies which are so vast that you could understand if there are certain delays. Right. That obviously the people that you may have sent to far-flung areas could have, gotten stuck owing to the terrible terrain or a broken down motor vehicle. There will be so many things, so many factors that can point to a justifying of delayed election results, but not for a modern constituency such as ours. And the case is true for the rural constituencies, especially, you remember back in the day when the election date was only known to the head of state, and that he would call for elections in the rainy season, which would even make it worse in terms of the climatic conditions, obviously exacerbating the terrain in our country. Right. So perhaps then things could have been justified like that, but not, like I said, for a modern urban constituency such as Ndola Central.
Okay, very quickly then, how euphoric was that moment when you heard your name announced as the eventual winner, despite all the delays and attempts, as you say, to sway the actual vote?
It was a bittersweet moment. I will confess that I actually did shed tears of joy. Right. Because it was brutal. When you look back at how we were being thrown in police cells, how we were being discouraged from, conducting smooth campaigns in your own country, to have to go through all that just to come and get elected. It shouldn't really be like that. And I would not wish it on anybody in the future that they have to go through what I went through for a mere election.
Very quickly.
And so for me, it was very, very emotional.
Yeah, so very quickly, talking about some of the things that you went through, there's a gun being pointed at you in front of cabinet office. Yeah. Tell us about that experience.
That was a nasty experience. That was a nasty experience because, I happen to know a thing or two about weapons handling. Even as a civilian, should you have undergone weapons handling training and you feel that in order to protect yourself, you need, for instance, to carry a firearm, depending sometimes on the nature of your job. You'll be advised on how you are supposed to handle yourself in public. You do know that even just walking into a public place and brandishing a gun is in itself, against the law, for which one can be arrested and prosecuted. Because if I pointed a gun at you, it doesn't matter whether that gun has got a safety catch on it. Okay, that is a mechanical gadget that is bound to fail. Okay, and so when you are accosted by a police officer who then points an assault, it's not just a weapon, it's an assault rifle on a defenseless citizen. Okay? If you know a thing or two about what I know about weapons, you do know that I actually saw this police officer cock this particular gun, meaning that he had placed a bullet in the chamber. Okay? It may not have had to be intentional on his part, but that gun could have gone off. And so the world would have seen a public execution of, a civilian such as myself. And so I really did see my life coming that close to being ended. Because even when a police station receives a report, only when they are told there is a situation of an aggravated robbery situation must they carry, their weapons fully loaded. You don't go to, marshal, innocent civilians with guns. No, we don't do that. And so I knew that that was highly reckless, and that that thing happened on the 23rd of December. And I remember by the it was 21st. And on the 23rd, I was on a movie TV program where I did say that that was unacceptable. It was extreme for a police service who are really supposed to be protectors of everybody in society. And I outlined the steps that I was going to take to ensure that such kind of conduct must not repeat itself. I remember, telling the nation that I was not only going to report to the IG, but I was going to file in a formal complaint, and that even before we formed government, that those particular police officers were disciplined and relieved of their duties. Yeah. But that I was going to take it all the way.
All the way, for some people, would be the presumption that you were very handsomely rewarded for that.
You wouldn't call that a handsome reward. No, for me it
It
was
could have been more.
absolutely, absolutely. It could have been more, but for me, I was able to rest my case because it was more of driving a particular statement.
Was the
Okay.
case only rested because you received some monetary appeasement, if you will?
No, 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 no. I did realize that I did make my case insofar as establishing, because had we gone to the full trial of that particular case, I think that the state would have been culpable for more. Now, obviously, the situation becomes a little bit complicated because I am a minister in government, and there would have been no need for me to keep on, going and demanding that I get the right type of compensation.
Tell me about you as minister. What's been the most difficult decision that you've had to make as minister after, the president so wonderfully appoints you as minister in charge of
Most difficult.
yes, most difficult decision.
Jeez. I don't know if I can call, most decisions difficult ones. Um, no, no. I haven't had that many of so-called difficult decisions. I would rather change the narrative and say, what's been your most successful, potentially legacy steering decisions?
Decision, yeah.
I think I've overseen a number of good policy shifts in the aviation sector. For instance, I was able, without flinching, to send my officers in the region to see what our neighbors were charging in terms of aircraft parking fees, aircraft landing fees, and even the cost of Jet A1 fuel. And that once I got the report, I was able to then, act that I was going to reduce the landing fees, the parking fees, and I spoke to my counterpart, minister in the energy sector, that we needed to do a reduction on the Jet A1 fuel. I'm glad I made those decisions because the result has been an increase in airlines obviously flying to Zambia. We've seen a record number of passengers being processed in this country ever, to the tune of somewhere north of 2 million passengers being processed by the Zambia Airports Corporation. Something that obviously is the highest number ever recorded by the corporation since it was established in 1989. But also one of the things that I'm very proud of is that together with the president, he's been able to um, encourage me to run with the Lobito corridor,
Right.
which has seen interest coming in from the EU as well as the United States government, and that I've been interacting at that level with our cooperating partners as we, forge ahead to bring this monumental infrastructure development
What's the
to our
ultimate
country.
benefit for Zambia?
The benefit is immense because obviously it will create the shortest route to the western seaboard, the port of Lobito in Angola. And so the much talked about greenfield and even brownfield mines that we have in the new copper belt of northwestern province will not need to be brought all the way back inland to go to Kapiri and out to Dar es Salaam. I think that those particular mining companies will have an escape route to go through into Angola and onto the port of Lobito in Angola. So it is going to be a game changer because we're not just looking at the construction of that particular rail line, but also the attendant infrastructure such as road and border infrastructure, but also logistics companies will need to be established together with energy companies. And so it will just open up the northwestern province like we've never seen before.
Right. So bringing it closer to home, then you are also member of parliament for Ndola Central.
Yeah.
The road network in your constituency is terrible.
It's terrible. I agree with you.
What are you doing?
Well, obviously, the role of the member of parliament is to be able to bring the plight of the constituency, particularly the different sectors, in the constituency to the relevant, sort of authorities. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I've repeatedly said that if it were within, my purview, I would have already sorted out the roads. But what I did do in 2023 is that in order for me to really make the case on the state of the roads, I invited the Minister of Infrastructure, whose responsibility it is to be able to do roads. So I brought him to the constituency to show him firsthand, particularly the famous Minsundo Road and many other roads, including the roads in the central business district. And I am on record as saying that I'll work with my counterpart in infrastructure to ensure that Ndola district in general, but Ndola Central in particular, does get a fair share of a number of roads to be done. Minsundu being top on my agenda.
Okay, so now we have a 30-second countdown and ask you several questions, which I hope that you can respond to very quickly. What's your favorite movie?
White House Now.
White House Now. What's your favorite place to visit in Zambia?
Mongo.
Pork or fish?
Fish.
Tea or whiskey?
Whiskey.
Why?
You asked me.
Why?
You're not going to ask me back.
Why? Why?
No, I mean, obviously, sometimes you get really stressed, you want to relax, and I think taken nicely and socially, it's a very nice drink, especially, you won't get the adverse effects of the so-called hangover in the morning. You wake up as if you didn't take any shots at all.
Right. So, yes or no? Do you think you're retaining the seat?
Yes.
Okay. Frank,
without a doubt.
Member of Parliament for Ndola Central, thank you very much for joining us on Raw Discourse.
Thanks for hosting me. It's been a wonderful program.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Ciao.